Hey, what's up? And welcome back to another episode of the Bate Escape. On today's episode, I am joined by our Bator brother, Steve, the leather cook. We talk about why Tori Amos is such a rock star, masturbation as stimming, and why the Bate Escape makes a really great name for a bait hotel. Enjoy the episode, bros. You look amazing. Where is
Thank
this
you.
in your dungeon in your home?
Yes, this is in my home. This is my basement.
Nice.
Yeah.
How long did that take you to build together?
Um, it's a work in progress, I would
Mm-hmm.
say. I have a friend in town who was telling me like, oh, he knows someone who was selling a sling.
Uh-huh.
And so he's like, oh, I found this sling for you. And it was, cheaper than buying a new sling. And so he helped me find that sling and then we put it up together. So I had help along the way. But this was the first space in my house. I moved into this house about 2.5 years ago.
Mhm.
This was the first room that I was like, this is where my money's going. Like it's important for me to create this sex space because I feel like that's something I've always wanted in a place that I live in, like just a dedicated space.
I agree 100%. I was actually thinking about that yesterday because I woke up that morning and I was like, God, I'm so humbled that I have like this studio that I could just call my bait den, right? Essentially,
Yeah.
like is where I have my sex. I have like all like my beautiful sex artwork. But I was thinking a goal of mine is to like own a residence and then have a room strictly dedicated and really build it up. Like,
Yeah.
and I envision it being very like I don't know, maybe it's just now, but I envision it being very retro 80s inspired. Like I want a lot of
Okay.
blues and purples and like neons and like neon dicks everywhere.
Do you want
But
mirrors?
I do. So like I want mirrors, but I also want like I want to hire like an interior designer to come in and be like, listen, this is just for sex. It's merely for masturbation. Like I want to
Mhm.
buy like big screen TVs. I want to like outfit it with like really good audio quality, just so I can
Yeah.
crawl into a space where I can lock myself away and just have this thing. And then maybe
Yes.
even have this space big enough for like 2, 3, or 4 people. It'd be nice.
I think I mean, for me, this is something that I feel like has changed my life in some ways. I mean, it's kind of silly to say,
Yeah.
but it's giving me just like a place where I can just totally inhabit
Hmm.
that vibe, that feeling.
Yeah.
And also I find that, there's just so much energy that I feel like I'm creating in the space, like not to get all like woo-woo,
Mhm.
but I just feel like when you masturbate or just have sex in the same location, and that's the only thing you're doing in that location, I feel like it builds some sort of energy.
Count my blessings every time I wake up. I'm just like, oh, this is finally a thing, like be able to just kind of own your sexual
Yeah.
space.
I
Um,
I also have an attic in this house, and that's something that I have not put any effort or money into. But
mhm.
I do also want to turn that into like a second dungeon or a second play space. And I'm still trying to figure out how best to work with that architecture because it's like a peak.
Yeah,
And if you're tall, I mean, like I will bang my head all the time when I'm there. Like I have to just be very conscious of like the wood paneling and things
yeah.
like that. But I'm trying to think about the best way to take advantage of that situation. And so again, like my house is like a work in progress of like, I think it's almost, I guess the analogy I would think about it as if you're like an archaeologist,
Mhm.
there's this like string of memories or strings of like things I've been into, especially when you look at my dungeon that are relics of like, every year I'll have like one thing that I really am into in masturbation and then, I'll try something else. And it's kind of like
Yeah.
a memory board in that way.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think people have different um things that they're passionate about, and you are like, you collect it. But I think for you, like when I look at you and your work, like it's very specific, obviously. You know, it's very leather.
Hmm.
I feel like I should really introduce you right now. I don't think
No,
I even introduced you. We've
I
already
think
been,
that we just like jumped in, but that's fine. I feel
yeah,
like
that's cool.
to be honest, like when I meet people, like there have been so many times when I'll fuck someone, I don't know their name and I don't want to know their name. Like, I kind of just don't want to know.
Well, that's when
But
we've
but I
talked
want to
about.
know after I've, come. Then I'll be like, hey, what's your name? But
That's what I was gonna say. I was like, we talked about that whole like being turned on by not anonymity.
yes,
Be like, I
yeah,
don't even know your fucking name. I just know your asshole. We'll
yeah.
talk. We'll talk about this later.
Yes, yeah. I don't need to know like where you work. I don't care. Like, let's just have sex.
Yeah.
So
No. Yeah.
I guess like the first 5 minutes of us talking had been like the foreplay and of us figuring it out, right? And now you can say my name. Now you can introduce me.
Well, it's good. Because like I've gotten really into like editing, so I mean, I'll chop this up any way we want. Like
Okay.
a lot of it gets edited out, but I just feel like anytime I like try to prompt, it just feels really unnatural. And you're just
Yeah.
like, no, I'm talking to my homie. Like, you're my buddy.
I think I
Did we meet on
introduced
Instagram?
myself to you because I think I found you on Twitter, on my alt Twitter. Um,
Mhm.
and then I think I messaged you on Instagram, uh, and maybe said like, hey, like I really like your Twitter. And then I think we just like had a conversation. I don't think that you had any idea. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to read into your head, but maybe I perceived that you didn't know my Twitter or know that I was interested, I'm into like the bait world and things like that. So I don't know like what your perception of me at the beginning was anyway.
Yeah, no, I think you know, I meet a lot of people on social. I think it's great. You're able to meet people from all different sort of places. And I just thought, oh, there's this like really hot like guy that's like into leather, but also into baking. I think that's what really hooked me. I was just like,
Yeah.
whoa, this guy like um bakes. Oh, and also to your
My
you
coffee
do
pour or what?
your coffee pours, yeah. So I'm so excited to be talking to my buddy the leather cook, Steve the leather cook.
Yes.
You can
Thank you
find,
so much for having me on.
yeah, of course, you can find them on Instagram. But you have different stuff going around. We can talk about those things. But I feel like Instagram is the leather cook, yeah.
Yes,
It's just
yes.
where you showcase a lot of like, so and even to this day I just assume that you're like a cook, but you're not a cook, are you, like by
I am
trade?
not, I mean, I'm a home cook, sure, but
Yeah, but
my
not.
profession is not cooking, right? Like I don't make my money from cooking.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
thought. I was just like, that's cool. Like, I've never really heard of that. And then you're just like dressed up in these like amazing like leather outfits, and you're like baking pies and shit.
Yes. And
um,
I mean, like that's something that even before I started posting on Instagram, I would just do, like it's not something that I just did for IG. It's like
yeah,
something I always would just like, why not? Like just hang out and do something ridiculous like that.
it's not ridiculous. It's like really
Well,
sexy.
yes.
It's like you're walking on shirtless, and all of a sudden you're like full on leather gear.
Yeah. It's not ridiculous. It's more like, I guess, unexpected.
Yes, it's a good unexpected. I like it. I enjoy
Yeah.
it. It's really nice. Um, how have your travels been? You've been all over the place since we last, like the last couple of weeks. You've been traveling a lot.
Yeah. I traveled for the past 3 weeks. I got back just 2 days ago. So yeah, it was great. I was in Spain for 4 days and then in Madrid and then just kind of just doing side trips here and there. And then I spent close to 2 weeks in Germany, going to Berlin, Hamburg, and Munich.
Had you ever been there to those places before? Is this your first time?
I had been to Madrid and Berlin before. This was my first time in Hamburg and Munich.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I've always wanted to go to Spain. Well, I've always wanted to travel. I've just never gotten the courage to do so.
Mm.
I get anxiety about traveling alone. But I'm trying to like, you know, jump out of that and really get myself over to Europe. I met a really cool people when I was in New York in Europe, and they thought, yeah, Berlin would be really good for me.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
def
I think you would thrive in Berlin. I think you would love it.
well, I want you to show me all the cool spots in Berlin. Funny, but like I've always been interested in leather community. I just never really gotten into and really immerse myself in that world. Like I really love going to like the Eagle
Yeah.
here in LA, which is a really cool spot. Where are you in the world? You're in New York.
I'm in upstate New York.
Yeah, what's the leather scene there like?
I mean, certainly not as developed as LA or New York.
Hmm.
But I feel like there's a growing leather scene here in upstate New York.
Yeah,
I organized the first like leather contingent to march in the Pride Parade here last year.
that's so
And
cool.
I got about 25 people to march with me under the leather flag. And so, that's something that I'll be doing again this year. So there is like a small community that it's growing. I feel like people are becoming more, I don't know, accepting of just showing their kinks and their differences here.
Yeah, I love a good kink.
Yeah, who
I
doesn't?
think I think that's really yeah. I think that, but I think that's really cool. Like I feel like you're doing the same thing that I'm trying to do, which is just like build community, like where
Yes,
you are on the topics that really um bring you pleasure, like masturbation and
exactly.
leather. A little tongue tied because the what I'm looking at right now.
Oh,
It's
should I turn off my camera? Is that what you're saying?
no, I leave it on. I think it's so sexy. Like I people need to see this. Like it's just like you're like radiating leather energy right now.
I appreciate
Radiating
that.
radiating daddy energy. Fuck yeah. Wait,
Yeah.
so what was going on? I know you went out to go see Tori Amos.
Yes.
And where did you see her perform?
I saw her perform in Berlin.
I've been a long time Tori Amos fan.
It's okay. So do you want to hear this little story that happened to me at the Tori Amos concert?
Yes.
Okay, so there's an opening act, right? And there were three chairs that were empty on the left of me. Okay, so after the opening act, I got a beer, got some popcorn, come back, and there's a couple, like a man and a woman, now sitting in those seats.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm talking to the man, and he's like, I've never heard of Tori Amos. He's like, my girlfriend here has dragged me to see this concert. And so I'm in this outfit. So I'm in like a leather outfit, I have my leather hat on. And like 5 minutes later, he comes, he puts his hand on my shoulder and he's like, I have a question for you. Can I ask a question? I said, sure. And he's like, I'm looking around and there's so many gay men. Can you can you tell me why there's so many gay men at the Tori Amos concert? And I was like, well, I can't speak on behalf of all gay men, but I mean, my guess or why I connect with her is, that she writes things from the heart. It's like full of emotion and it's complex issues, right? Like, what would you say? Like, why do you connect with Tori?
Well, I think excuse me. I started back on the weed and poppers, and I'm just
Oh,
like,
sorry.
you know, when you wake up and you're just like, God, I need to like
I know. Yeah.
kick the habit, man. Tori Amos is just like she's like queer as fuck. Like
Yeah.
she was probably one of the first when I was growing up, coming out and really dealing with my own sexual identity. Like she was like gay as fuck. Like
Yeah.
there was just whatever queerness or gayness or um the angst of holding in like who you really are and just wanting to tell the world and sing out loud and like embody who you really want to be. I think she was doing it at a time when everyone was like, what the fuck is this shit?
Yes.
Right? Like
Yeah.
everyone was kind of like, who, well, I don't understand this fucking music. She's being so authentically herself.
Yes.
Um, and I think for me, the part that I really resonate with, it's just the angst of it all. Like, God, that's fucking
Yeah.
track is major. Like, are you kidding me? Like, she's such a badass. She's a fucking rock star. Like,
Totally.
you
Totally.
might be seeing her like the way she owns that musical instrument with both hands. I mean, the woman
I,
is like back and
yeah.
forth on these pianos. Like, who
She does
does
not even
that?
need to look at it.
She does
It's
it like it's like she is herself an instrument.
yes.
So
Yes.
I've always found her really captivating. I saw her once in it might have been the Greek.
Mhm.
And she was really great. She was really
Yeah.
great.
I find everything that you said, that especially her earlier albums are full of angst and like relationship
Mm.
issues and basically dealing with all of those topics that are like fundamental but are so specific, I feel like, to your your teens, your 20s, your 30s. um
Well, to
and then
us.
you feel like you see over her albums, she kind of like starts out very personal, and then her later albums are almost more political or more like of the times, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's also like a progression of like how one thinks or processes the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I will always be a fan of like Little Earthquakes, of course. That was like iconic album. And then I really loved Choir Girl Hotel.
Yes. Yeah.
I thought that was a really fantastic album.
That was the first album of hers that I listened to, because I remember my sister's gay friend had left that album like in 1998 or whenever it came out. He left it in our computer, and I remember being like 12 and like finding that album and like ripping the album. That's what it's called, right? Like ripping the album so I could convert the songs into an MP3s,
Yeah.
uh, you know, and then put it on Napster. Like that was me at 12.
He left it there on purpose, you know that, right?
That was what
He left that album on purpose. He knew.
he probably,
He was
yeah,
like,
he
here's a
probably
little
did.
gift for this little homosexual, this budding homosexual.
He has no idea. He had no idea what he just did.
Well, hopefully you like listen to the podcast and it's just like I knew it.
I
He
hope
blessed you
so.
with the Tory queerness.
So going back to that concert, the guy that had asked me about why there's so many gay guys, halfway through the performance, he leans into me and he's like, so I think I like Tori Amos.
Is he hitting on
And,
you?
and I'm like, well, I don't think you're gay, so don't worry. And he kind of just looked at me, and then he was like, oh yeah, he's joking. I don't know if there was a language issue, but yeah. So
That's,
not only gay guys can like Tori Amos, I guess, is the point I'm trying to make.
yeah, no, everybody can like Tori Amos.
Yeah.
I just remember her being in a very acquired taste. Like she was not very popular. Like she was never mainstream, but she definitely had a following, like this underground following, like this cult
Yes.
following. Like you knew Tori Amos, you were part of this family. And I think that's another reason why I really enjoyed her music was because you could be a freak. You could be dealing with depression. Obviously, she spoke a lot about mental issues. You know, she did it in a way that was so artistic. But you know, if you could read between the lines, if you really got the music, it was like you were speaking a specific. You, it's like you were speaking a secret language to the people
Mhm.
who really understood her music, and you could relate that way. And I
Yes.
think that's what all music, if it's really powerful, if it's really good, you know, you're able to communicate through sound and through music. And I think that's, I always thought to myself, if I had a, a talent, it'd be singing. I mean,
Mm.
wouldn't that be fun? You could be a leather baker rock star.
Are you saying I'm not already?
Are you? Are you out? Maybe that's where you went to Berlin. You ass.
No, yeah, I feel like singing would be cool. I just feel like I'm good where I am. I would much prefer. I want to develop the talent of like relearning the piano. Like that's kind of the thing that I want to go into. And
You
when I
said
was traveling,
you said
I was
relearning.
well, yeah. I mean, like I taught myself as like a kid, like
Mm,
because I was playing trumpet, and then I taught myself how to play like all the songs I had to play on trumpet on the piano by sound, so that like I was able to like coordinate the note and like where I'm supposed to press on the keyboard.
yeah.
And then like I don't know, around like sixth or seventh grade, I kind of just stopped doing
Mhm.
it. So I kind of want to, I kind of miss being able to create music like that. So I feel like it's
Yeah.
always been like an aspiration of mine to like kind of go back into it. But my problem is that I want to do everything and time is finite. And we,
Yes, I can totally do that. There's a lot of things I wanted to do. I feel like if I wanted to do music, I would really love to make like produce like big tracks.
hmm,
Like just like 90s like house music, but like just
yes.
have it be like Bator shit. I do follow a couple people on Soundtrack, but it's like not enough. I want more. Like I want consistent, like I want like Bator artists to consistently just make bait music. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I know. I used to have the SoundCloud probably like 5 years ago where I did that's where I first started making some like bait tracks and it got taken down. Like it got so popular. I was getting like 1,000 to 2,000 plays like a day on some of my tracks. And then it got flagged for like pornography and it got taken down and I was like really upset. So
Yeah, that is upsetting.
and like I have a Patreon where I put that stuff on, but I just haven't like advertised it that much. So it's kind of like you kind of fall into it. If you're into that kind of thing, you kind of discover it. But do you know what I
I'm
mean?
I'm into that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We have that kind of thing. I feel like we did. We had like a we had like a verbal bait session once. It was really hot.
Yeah.
I'm really into leaving voice notes right now to like
Yes.
baiters. I love
Yes.
that shit. I do it all the time. I forget that it exists. And then I'm just like, wait, this is like another thing like I could fucking do.
Yeah.
And it really turns me on. I'll like
I
listen back to my own shit and I'm just like, fucking
I
killing me.
love listening to all the voice memos on Twitter, like all the ones that are just like, start huffing your fucking poppers, blah, blah, blah. Like that stuff. Like, I'm like, why can't you make this like 7 minutes? Like, just like keep going,
Yeah,
you
like
know,
make it like a
a proper track.
yeah, make it like a whole DJ set. Like put a
Yeah.
fucking out. I want to go to a fucking masturbation baiter party and someone's spinning baiter tunes
I,
for a
oh,
fucking hour, and it's just like masturbation on repeat. Like I
so
just want to hear sex.
one of my fantasies, and I have so many fantasies and they keep coming true. So I'm going to just put this out in the universe. But like one of my fantasies is to basically be like a coach for a live masturbation session, like let's say an IML or something like that, where we get a room and the room, let's say, looks like this, it's dark and dimly lit, but I'm
Yes.
there giving like vocal commands of like, stroke your penis or, huff your poppers, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going into like a hypno space
Yeah.
and everyone is there in the circle, doing this under my, command. And that to me would be like really hot just because I haven't seen that done. Um, and I feel like that would be
I
worthwhile.
think I remember going to like, was it Pride? And they would have those tents, and it was like the only tent at Pride that was closed off. And you
Oh,
had to like be at a certain age to go in, and you would go in, and it would be like a leather demonstration, and they
Oh,
would have like people in the leather community kind of talk about the kinks and like power dynamics and sub and dom play, and they would
interesting.
come out, they would bring out all the tools, all the whips and
Sure.
chains, and
Yeah.
they'd go over, like they would actually put someone in these things as a demonstration. I think you'd be really good at that.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Yeah, you should.
No, I think that that's one of my goals is to take up that like educator space or that mentor space because
Mhm.
I think that a lot of people are interested in the leather community, but they may be intimidated
Hmm.
by, the look or just not sure maybe how to even get in, and they may feel embarrassed about asking questions and things like that. So I
Yeah,
find that at least on Instagram, like a lot of people will ask me questions about the leather community, and I certainly enjoy, answering them and having people feel more comfortable about exploring themselves and exploring that type of space.
yeah, yeah. I think you're the type of person that you could talk to, you could answer questions about. Like I
Mhm.
could ask you something and be like, oh yeah, that's really informative. I love coming from that space too, because I feel like there is a lot of again, I feel like people just don't know how. And people are constantly trying to be like, I want to be like a better whatever, better at sex, better at this, better at that. And being able to be in that space as a educator and just say, hey, I've been doing
Yes.
this for a really long time. This is what worked for me. It could totally
Yes,
work for you too.
exactly. Exactly.
um, I don't know. I feel like it's probably past that time, but I kind of feel like I want to go back to school and do more like sex education work and like
Mm.
really get into that space. I find it really fascinating.
I know I had debated like doing a coaching program or getting some sort of like
Mm,
certificate in sex education, but I'm also like, I feel like in the past, those that were sex educators, they often just learned from experience, like they didn't need an official piece of paper. It's kind of like you become a member of the community by all of your activities and by all of your experiences. And so I also feel like that's a total valid way to do it.
yeah, I totally agree. I feel like yeah, I think there's different avenues that you can take. But again, I do think that there's like you as an individual who's passionate about the subject is going to want to learn as much as you possibly can about said subject. So then you come from a place of education of like, well, I've done all this research on my own and I've studied, and I mean, I'm sure you surround yourself with people that have been in the community for years and they have their own experiences, and you're picking brains and you're
Yes.
doing this. Yeah, you take the work upon yourself to really say, I can, hey, I can answer this as best I can.
Yeah.
um but I always, it always for me, it always comes from a lived experience. Like it's like, this is what really worked for me, I don't know. And I always try to
Exactly.
preface that it's like everyone's on their own thing, so
Yeah.
you know
And I think to connect this to masturbation, because I feel like I mean I would say I was more active in the Bator community before I became more active in the leather community.
mhm,
And so I feel like there's this position, let's call it position if we want to be formal about it, of being like a coach in the Bator community. And I feel like,
mhm.
the coaches that I have interacted with, they've really helped me, not just in like masturbation, but in life of just like accepting pleasure without guilt and things like that. And I feel like in the leather community, there's also like a similar position of being like an elder or like an educator and things like that. So I feel like there's some like overlap about how the two communities work in a way.
Yeah, it's a nice little intersectionality there.
Yeah.
I think that's really great. Penis.
It unites us all.
What was that?
It unites us all.
I mean, it unites you if you wanted to unite you. I wanted to unite me all the time. I just had like this new. I just met a new beta bro, and it came over last night. And
Mm,
it was really sweet. I always find it really interesting how people are on different levels of like being a baiter, and you kind of I
yeah,
love meeting people where they're at because it's like I don't know. I'm at a point now in my life where I'm just like, okay, like I know my energy, my beta energy so well, um, that I'm just like, okay, I know what I can do to get myself off, but I find it more interesting when I meet people where they're at, and I
yeah,
get so curious about people's kinks and
yes,
fetishes, and like it really turns them on. I'm just like, okay, let me play with you then. Like, let's just do what you want to do. Because people are always like, what are you into? And I'm just like, I don't want to talk about myself. Let's talk about what you're into, because that's
yes,
really what
yes.
turns me on right now. Um, and I feel like all of this year, um, that's where all my sex has come from. And
Mm.
I find it really arousing to just be like, I'm gonna try new shit.
I think that's really interesting. What I kind of the idea that popped in my head, I got this picture of like a tree, and
Hot.
what I was thinking about is I feel like when you start out as a baiter or just in sex in general, like it's kind of like we're all doing the same thing, most of us, right? And then there gets to be a point where you start, if you get to this point, you start recognizing the specific kinks that you have, or the specific like points on your body that you like to be, pressured. And we all start like branching off and kind of specializing in those specific areas or those kinks. And it's kind of like a tree. And what I always find interesting is when I interact with baiters that are like in their 50s or in their 60s, and they have been developing their kink for like 40 or 50 years, and they're at like level 1000 of it. And like, it is like your mind is blown by their technique. And that's what I find really fascinating, is kind of the evolution of the baiter. Like, if they're really into it, like if they make it their life, where they end up going.
Yeah, that's why I feel like like older baiters or just having sex with older men though is so hot in a
Yeah.
way that it's like really um yes, it's respectful, but it's also very like I can see myself in them because it's like
Mm,
I will eventually get to this
yeah.
age, you know, fingers crossed.
Yes.
um and it just makes me, it's so sexy to know that I'm hooking up with like this 60-year-old man, that I will soon be 60 and I will still be as horny or
Yeah.
hornier. And that makes me really happy because it's something to look forward to. And I'm just like, God, I never want to not masturbate. Like I just want to continuously like give myself pleasure. Fuck it. I want to go masturbate.
I
Just want to
know.
have like the best orgasm. Just be like, you're dead. I'm done.
I mean, it's one thing that I think about is like the orgasms that I have now in my mid to late 30s are like, I could never dream of this in my 20s, like where I am, like the things I'm into and where I am, but also the amount of pleasure I'm able to give myself and how I've learned to control that. Like, the
Yeah.
in some ways, the ways that I've mastered my body, I'm really shocked at, because I was like, I can see the progress, from where I was in my 20s.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I know exactly where to go and how to get off. And
Yeah.
it's just I remember when I was first learning how to goon, and I really wanted to get there. It just kind of just happened. And I've been gooning for the last, I don't know, couple of years. And so now it's just an automatically goon. Like I can look at a picture of a butthole and goon. Like I don't even need to teach, like touch myself. Like it's just like this thing where it's like you evoke like your beta energy, and it just
Yeah.
kind of like, it's like a superpower, really.
I think so. I mean, I think it's something where over time you learn how to like access that door, or like that part in your brain, and you know
Yeah.
how to get to it. Like, I think that, sometimes drugs can help facilitate that process, if you take weed and
Sure.
so forth, but then you can learn from that experience of that and be able to access it even when you're sober. I feel like
Yes.
um
Because you've already gotten to that point. You know what that
yes,
you've already experienced it. So you can take that energy and like bring it forth whenever you need it.
exactly. It's kind of like when you first get to that point, it's kind of like traveling on a dirt road, like you found the trail,
Yeah.
but then you can repeat that experience in a sober way and like kind of pave the road so that you're able to get to it like easier.
Oh, I like that. It's like a dirt road. It's like you're masturbating on a dirt road.
I know. I mean, like, I don't know about you, but whenever like a lot of my ideas come to me when I'm masturbating. Like
Yeah,
I'll have ideas,
absolutely.
like just random thoughts, and I feel like it's probably when I'm masturbating, I'm relaxing a side of my brain that like is either really tense or whatever, and things will pop up. And I always like I'll have my phone or something near me, and I'll make a note. If I don't want to, if I continue masturbating, I will forget that thought,
Sure.
right? And so it's a question of, do I want to like take the 1 minute to jot this thought down and perhaps edge myself and limit the possibility of having an orgasm? Or do I want to like go through and hope that I can keep two things in my head? Um,
I
that's
think you can. I think you can keep a lot of things in your head.
I do, but if I'm in that space, it's kind of hard. I would say like there are times when I'm masturbating, and it's like thought, 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 thought. And I'm like, I just need to
I
organize
just
all of this.
I try not to do too much thinking when I'm on penis. Everything that I feel like funny it's when I am on penis, everything around me will just look like a dick. Everything will
I
smell like dick. Everything will taste like dick because it's all I want to think about or like be.
for me, when I'm able to like really enter the space,
Mhm.
everything else disappears. Like it's like
Mm.
there's black all over, and then whatever the thing is that I'm focusing on, that's the only thing that exists. Like
Mhm.
time has disappeared,
Yeah,
like my ego has disappeared,
yeah,
everything like fades, and it's like this one thing I can do. Like I go into autopilot where like I focus into one thing,
yeah.
and it's a meditative space. It's I do think it's like meditative, and that's why ideas kind of pop up, I think.
Well, one of the things that we've talked about, and I feel like or something to think about, is this idea of masturbation as stimming.
Yeah.
Um, and the more I think about it, and you introduced me to this book, um, Unmask, Unmasking Autism.
Unmasking autism. Yeah.
Yeah. So Steve introduced me to this book, and I found it super fascinating. There's a lot of things on there that I was just like, okay, yeah, it's there's a lot of things that are like resonating with me, and that was one of the things that I found most interesting because I thought, God, there's so many different aspects or different ways people do stim.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what stimming is, it's like a repetitive behavior.
Yeah. I would say it's repetitive behavior that it's probably done to calm yourself down or to feel to make yourself feel better.
Yes. And masturbation. I feel
Yeah.
like masturbation has to be the top three stimming activities.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
It must be. But I
um,
imagine because of society, people don't want to talk about it. It's probably not as like reported, but I'm sure that we know what's going on.
sure. And it's funny, I'm very open about masturbation. And I was talking to my psych the other day, and I was just like, I think I'm like having issues with the medication because I'm on antidepressants.
Mm,
And one of the things that before I even began to take the treatment was how is this going to affect my sex life? Because I was like, I do not want it to decrease it. I do not want it to affect it. And I feel like in the last couple of weeks it has. And I had this
mm.
conversation with him on Friday, and I was like, listen, something needs to change because I'm not going to live my life this way where I don't feel as sexual as I used to
Yeah.
when I started doing this thing. He's like, how long has it been happening? Anyway, where I'm giving myself 2 weeks to be really mindful of what's happening to my body and the things that are
Mm,
happening. But like, if this is going to be an issue, like something needs to
yes.
change. Like, this is not something that I'm willing to give up or have um in order to live like a
Yeah.
happy life. I will find other ways to make myself happy or,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know, to make myself feel better, but I can't let go of the masturbation.
I totally know what you, I totally know what you mean. I would say that, like, I've been thinking about this for probably at least a month. Like, I
Mhm.
think that we chatted about this a little bit. Um, and once I started thinking about it that way, like I had mixed feelings about
Mhm.
it.
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't know, like there have been times in my life where I felt guilt or shame about masturbation, or like I would come and then I would feel like this pleasure followed by guilt, right? And it probably comes from like a lot of childhood shit of not ever feeling like safe, or like when something good would happen, it would be followed by something bad.
Yeah.
So I've been dealing with a lot of that bullshit. And I recognize that I've used masturbation in the past as, certainly as a teenager, but also in my 20s, as something that like calmed me down or made me feel numb in times when I felt really anxious and overwhelmed.
Mm. Mhm.
So, I mean, it's a difficult conversation to have of like, is there a time when masturbation is unhealthy? And I like to think it's always healthy, but
Yeah, I think it's always healthy too. But what I'm curious to know, when do you think it could be unhealthy?
um I think it could be unhealthy if there's I mean, if there's like physical damage that happens, um, because you're doing it too much.
Sure.
That could be that could be a sign.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, like it could be unhealthy if it's something where preventing you from like doing work or something like that you need to get done.
Like an addiction.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a real concern. I've had people come to me and say, "God, I think I am addicted to masturbation. I feel like I'm doing it too much." I'm like, "Okay, well, let's unpack this. Like,
yeah,
what do you think is too much?" We use the word unhealthy, right?
I think so. Yeah,
Okay, good. Because I was gonna say, like, masturbation is never bad. Yes, it can be unhealthy, but I feel like it can be unhealthy only really just when it starts to affect other places in your life, right?
yes,
Just like
yeah,
in any kind of
in
addiction,
any
whether it's
context. Yeah,
yeah, and that's something that I've learned along the ways, and that could be any behavior. It could be working out too much or eating too
exactly.
much, but yeah. So then, yeah, I do agree that the unhealthiness comes when it gets in the way of things that you need to live
Yeah,
your life, like go to work or
yeah.
feed your dog. That's when it becomes unhealthy.
Yeah, and I
But
think back to like as a child, um, just being so overwhelmed by my home situation that I would just masturbate like a lot. And so as an adult, like I had this like thought of like, well, was that unhealthy? And I'm like, no, I don't think it was, because I didn't like, given the skills that I had at that point and all the things I had access to, like that was actually the healthiest option for me to calm myself down, to make myself feel better, and for me to deal with the situation. And so I do think that sex can be something that is like calming, that's healing. And we're given this ability to have sex for a reason. And I think that we should use it. I think we shouldn't feel guilty about utilizing that.
yeah, no, that I can agree with that. What's coming up for me is this idea of like not using the sex to think that that's going to get rid of your problem, right? So like for me, it's to understand like, okay, I'm feeling really overwhelmed, I'm feeling really triggered, I need to self-soothe. Let me step out of the situation, go masturbate, have that quality time, self-soothe, whatever I need to do in order to bring myself back to a grounded space. Then
Yes.
after the fact, really start to unpack that thing that
Yes.
triggered you to get to your masturbation phase, right?
Yes.
Because I don't want people to start thinking like, oh, masturbation is like a cure-all for your mental health. It's not.
No, no.
It's a great space to be, to self-pleasure and to take the time out, and to really kind of bring you back to the present space. But yeah, after you've done it and you feel good about yourself and
Yeah.
you've calmed down, then you can go back and visit the space and be like, okay, let's really
Yes.
work out what's going on here.
And I like what you just said because it reminds me of a process that I still do, which is if I have a decision I'm trying to make, it could be as simple as deciding where I'm going to travel on
Mhm.
vacation. I will masturbate. If I'm kind of stuck on making a decision, I'll masturbate and the decision will come to me during the masturbation.
Hmm.
And if it doesn't, sometimes it's like after the release, like I'll have an idea, but the masturbation kind of like lets me relax. And then like an idea may pop in my head that will then influence like, oh, that this is what you should be doing. Right. Like to me, it's always been something, and I'm not saying like just jerking off once is gonna unlock this. It could be like, over several
multiple
days or over several hours or
multiple
whatever.
times
Yes.
masturbated. Fuck yeah. Fucking edge that dig, dude.
Yes.
That's
But
funny.
it's a tool that I use to help me make decisions occasionally. Yeah.
No, yeah, no, I use it all the time too. I'm just like, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. So yeah, if you want to say that stimming masturbation is a great stimming technique, it is.
Yeah.
Keep at it, bros.
Nothing wrong with it.
If you don't know what to do, if you can't make a choice, just masturbate.
It will come to you.
It will come to you. That's why I feel like masturbation is so great. Like I'm always not gonna not talk about how the powers of masturbation, how amazing it is.
Yes. Yeah.
I like being a baiter. I like talking to other baiters about baiting.
Mm. It's interesting. Like today I was thinking about my bait journey
Mhm.
and how I feel like once I became more part of the leather community, I I didn't bait as much, or like, I was
Hmm.
way more active on like Skype at one point in bait world. And now it's like less so.
Why do you think that is?
And I think that's just because for me, I go through these periods of like, sometimes I want to have sex with other people,
Mhm.
and other months I don't want to be near people and I rather just bait. So I definitely feel like there's these larger like patterns of like, oh, I'm really into this year. And then next year I'll be like, no, like I'm gonna go back into like doing things on Skype and things like that. So it's kind of this larger thing of like, I'd like to see what's happening in like the whole sexual field and like really get to know one area and then be like, all right, let's like get good at a different part of this.
Well, I think that's why I'm so fascinated by sex and like intimacy and like just the theme, because you're right, it is like a journey. You go through these different phases of your life where you're just like, oh, people get so conflicted about it because it's like, oh, I used to like this and I don't know. That's cool. Just follow that trajectory, man. Like no
Yes.
one's gonna, it's your life, it's your genitals, it's your
Yeah.
pleasure. Like um I've gone through ebbs and flows for sure. I mean, the foundation of my sexuality will always be solo sexuality, but um I love exploring different genres in that, and
Yes.
different like sub kinks in that. Like,
Totally.
having a conversation with masturbators, and I think one, or again, another of our superpowers is our ability to focus on different sex acts rather than just penetration.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yep.
yes, I'm turned on by penetration, it's great, but I love I love like reading about sex, like
Yeah.
nifty.org is great. If y'all don't know what Nifty is, that's a great place to go. I just ordered a couple of books from I think it's called Handy J. Are you familiar
Okay.
with
I haven't
this?
heard of that.
I'll send you a link. Because I really want like these vendors to keep this tradition of like gay media alive. Like I
Mm,
think it's dying.
yeah.
So I'm always willing to support. Like I love Butt Magazine. Do you know Butt Magazine?
Yes. Yeah.
I love that it came back. So I'm always supporting that. Where was I going with that? I lost my train of thought.
I forget.
I don't know. I just love talking about masturbation, penis.
We were talking about Bator and the Bator journey and the fact that like we kind of
Yes.
evolve over time.
Yeah. Or that you can go on, like you can live, you can. We're more inclined to like experiment with the different avenues of sex. Like
Yes.
where I'm really into phone sex. I love the verbal. I love hearing
Yeah.
it. Like it's very
Yeah.
auditory for me. So that's
Yes.
really nice. Reading it's really nice. Hearing it from other baiters is really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. There's several thoughts that pop in my head. One is that I really think even if we're in person and we're baiting, to me that's sex. And I have
Yeah.
always been a little offended when I hear people only think about sex as penetration, because I think that sex is more about the energy that's created rather
Mhm.
than one act. So I've always had an issue with that, and I feel like as masturbators, I feel like we have a more like broad term of what we deem as sex.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you on that for sure. Like I don't think sex has just been, there's so many different ways you can have it.
Totally.
Um and it is about, I think it is about energy for me. Like if the vibes are off, then it's not something that I'm gonna have a good time doing, right?
Totally.
And
Totally.
that can be anything. That could be even when people want to make the argument of like anonymous sex. Like even if I'm engaging in anonymous sex, you can feel the vibe in that
Yes.
exchange. Like your gut is telling you like, is this gonna be good anonymous sex or is it gonna be like shady, like sketchy? And
Uh
that's all, it's all subjective. It
yes.
all depends on the
Yes.
person and what your threshold of like anonymous sex
Yeah.
is. Um and I think it's really important to continue to have that conversation because there's people out there watching all these videos and you're just like, oh, that's the kind of anonymous sex I need to have in order to do anonymous sex. And if that's really your thing, there's layers to sex. Like there's so
Yes.
many different ways that you can obtain that in a
Yes.
capacity that's going to make you feel um the thing you're trying to feel. Because
Yes.
ultimately I've learned that it's not necessarily, like it's a combination of things, but ultimately they're going for a feeling, whatever that is. Like if they want to feel
Mm,
dom, if they want to feel sub, or
yes.
if they want to feel risky, or um it's ultimately that rush that they're trying to obtain, and they can
Mm.
get it in so many different ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think in one way I used to use sex, especially in like my teens and 20s, of like that's as gay men, I think one of the easiest ways to connect with other people, right? Because sex in general is like quite available. Like for me at times, it's been easier for me to find a sex partner than to find someone who wants to go out for breakfast,
Sure,
right?
yes, that is real,
So
yes.
I feel like the feeling sometimes could be as base as like just human connection, but in other ways, I think um at least for me, like I think about my beta journey, uh, I started out and it's like I can occupy both roles, but I started out primarily only as like a sub baiter. So like I really loved being coached and being told,
Mm.
when to take poppers and like basically being told exactly what to do, when to come, and things like that. Like I was in that realm for many years.
Hmm.
And then I transitioned into coaching sometimes, but that was after years of basically studying how to be coached myself.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's uh, kind of been an evolution that now, depending on my feelings or what I want activated,
Mhm.
I can go either way.
Yeah. Yeah. The student becomes a teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's hot as fuck.
And then it's harder when the student fucks the teacher.
Hey. That is really high. But I also too think for me it's come with age. Like as like I'm older, I'm very much entering like the Pedro Pascal phase of my life where I'm just like daddy all the way. Like
Yeah.
it turns me on at this point. I think when I was getting towards 40, I was being a little conflicted because I was at an age like in my late 30s where I was being
Yeah.
called daddy, but I was like, I don't feel it yet. Like I'm not there. And I don't know. I think once I reached the 4-0, I was like, okay, I can
Mm,
do this. I
yeah.
can really inhabit this space now. Um, and I really enjoy it. It's really hot as fuck.
Me too. It's only been, I would say, in the past year or two since that's what people primarily call me. Um,
Daddy?
and yeah, and I live now in a university town at which I don't work at the university, and so all the students are free game for me. And you know, it's really hot for me to kind of train these college kids. I feel like I have a lot of experience and a lot of technique, and for them to experience that, I feel like, it's always something that like kind of turns me on, that they have never been in a sling or things like that, and to be the first one that like introduces them to different toys. And I kind of get off on that whole like educator part.
It's really sexy. I can get off on it becoming really like medical. Like
Mm.
really like, oh, like we're gonna measure your body now. If you could just please send that for me. If you can disrobe, we're gonna go ahead and measure your penis. Make
I
sure
know,
you're
it's like when it's like really formal like that, that's really hot.
it is
Just
really sexy because you're just like,
formal
fuck,
words.
this is all
Yes.
I've ever wanted. I just imagine like the sexiest pediatrician you ever had. Ah, that's fucking great, dude. That's so fucking amazing. How did you get into like baking and stuff?
As a kid, I don't know if kids still do this, but I had to take a home economics class, when I
Mhm.
was like 12, right? So that was kind of my introduction to baking. And from there, I kind of just slowly developed a passion for baking and exploring the kitchen and things like that. Um, but it wasn't until like after college when I had my own, I was in an apartment not eating food from the campus,
Yeah.
that I was like, all right, I need variety in my life. Like just as much as I need variety in my sex life, I need variety in my diet life. And so I didn't have a lot of money. So I was like, I need to learn how to cook cheaply, but something that's going to be flavorful
Mhm.
in different dishes. And so it kind of came from this point of like self-sufficiency, but also frugality, and wanting to travel but not having the money, and basically cooking being the way I can visit different cultures.
Do you cook for your boys?
uh some of them,
That's hot.
the ones in which I don't know their name, they're just whole number one, two, three, and so forth.
Sure.
But there are some people that will come over, and I'll cook them a meal.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
hot. And then have them do nasty, dirty things to you.
of course.
Of course.
One so one of my Let me tell you another fantasy of mine. So one of my other fantasies is basically opening up like a bait hotel, where if like a baiter wants to just masturbate like all weekend, I will just make them like the most delicious food. Like they can tell me their dietary restrictions, and then I'll make the food and I'll leave it outside the door so that they can just like bait like the whole day. And I'm going to make them like healthy food so that they have the stamina to keep baiting. And, they'll be in this room that's just like all screens. So they can't just stop. And yeah.
Can we go in on this hotel together? I've fully invested. I would love that. I really would. I just feel like another thing that I would love to do is like open like a sex, like I've always wanted to open a sex store, like
Okay.
a store that actually sells like sex toys and um clothing and articles and gear, whatever.
Yeah.
But then at the time I was also doing like sex coaching work, and I was like, oh, I want to combine the both of them, like so you could come
Mm,
to this establishment, get sex coached, when you have all the product available to you, so you can like kind of
yeah.
sell people what the things that they need. But I also think too, I would like it to be like a third thing, like after hours. I just wanted to be like a sex club,
Yes.
like everything kind of shuts down, the rooms open up, and then like
The
that's when like
slings come from the ceiling, they just
that's
drop down.
that's right. Yeah, like I'm gonna make it very like aesthetically pleasing. Do that whole like 80s retro vibe again. Just have it be like a space to do that for. I do like this hotel though. What can we
I know.
call this hotel?
I don't know, like, I mean, you could call it something as simple as like the Bait Hotel. It could be the name of your podcast, the Bate Escape. I mean, like that's the name of a hotel, right?
I should trademark.
You should totally trademark before someone who's listening to this steals this idea.
Serious shit. Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. Because I feel like someone's really gonna get on it. What the fuck? Um, I'm looking forward to the new Bait Off
Yeah, in
Bait Off
May.
series in May. Yeah, because I caught a couple of bros actually being in it, and I'm so happy that Bait World chose them to be in it. They really want to do that, watch them do their thing,
That's
and
good.
masturbate right along with them.
As you should.
You know what we should do? We should do like
What?
a on Twitter. We should host like a
A
what do you call it?
space.
Yeah, and it's just like us, like just verbal, like
Oh my God, that would be so fun. We should
just
do that.
fucking like coaching people and like having
Yes.
people just like
Yeah.
masturbate and shit.
I when Spaces came out initially, um I like at one point like hosted this space that like had 100 people, and I would just select like one person and coach them and have everyone listen to it and then get them off and then take the next person. And it was just like this conveyor belt of like baiters. And it kind of, I don't know, like I I feel like in the past few months, like I've just used Twitter less and less. Uh
Because it's shit.
yeah. And I wish that there was a different social network that was as, I don't know, like sexual. Like I feel like Twitter's the only place that I can put up like a lot of the non-cooking stuff that I work on. And I don't know where else that people can really share that besides like Tumblr, but I don't know if people actually use Tumblr anymore.
Uh, I mean, yeah, no, Tumblr died. I mean, there's new Tumblr.
Yeah.
I used to have a new Tumblr, but there was just so much going on. Like I
Yeah.
had all these different social avenues. I wasn't paying attention to it. Plus, it was just like, you know, regurgitating things that had already happened. But I'm waiting. I'm waiting for someone to like make up a new Twitter because yeah,
I mean,
Twitter's
like,
so bad.
but you and I are on Telegram, and I feel like Telegram is
Mhm.
like one option, but it's something where like it's all channel based instead of having like your own page. So
Yeah.
it's harder to disseminate like your information. You have to be in this particular topic. It's a little
Yes.
bit different.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's the new, to me, I feel like Telegram is where I spend a lot of my bait time.
Mhm.
Because I feel like there's just so much material now on Telegram.
Yeah, I do think that Telegram's like the new space that I feel like I am um, interacting more with. And
Yeah.
I tell people to come over because I just feel like I don't know. my values and using Twitter. I'm just like, I can't. I feel shitty every time I go log on to the fucking platform.
Yeah.
But it's like the one place where, yeah, I have the
And
most followers
and I
internally.
just feel like Twitter seems so unstable. There's a part of me that's like, it's gonna burn to the ground like in a year or two.
Totally.
So should I be putting into something to, be putting an effort into something that I know is gonna collapse? Like that's kind of what's in my head.
Mm, yeah, that's true. That is true. That's okay. Just move all that shit over. It won't be too much. It is going to go down to the ground. I'm waiting for the day. This is cool chat.
I know. I feel like we've been chatting for like more than an hour, it
I
seems, but
know.
it feels like it's been like a second.
Yeah, that's the power of masturbation.
I know.
You like look at a time where you're just like, yeah, I've been masturbating for an hour and a half. It feels like
I
only
know.
10 minutes. That's what I'm going to do when I get off this call. I'm going to go masturbate.
I might do the same.
How do you get ready for
It's
a masturbation session?
how
I'll
did
be
I
good.
what?
How do you get ready for a session in your dungeon? Do you do it in your dungeon always? Or
Yeah.
do you,
Yeah.
yeah?
I I primarily do it in my dungeon. It like I change places. So there sometimes like I'll just be in my bedroom.
Uh-huh.
But it only this may sound weird, but I'm so attuned to the environment that I I don't want to say 100% of the time, but let's say 90% of the time, I 95% of the time, like I prefer to bait when it's dark, right? So like I'd rather have like, be in my dungeon or at night, like maybe baiting in my bedroom.
Mm,
Um, but like it's a question of what I'm doing during the bait. If I want to watch porn, then I'll go in my dungeon. But if I rather just like, you know, have a mirror bait session or
mhm.
just be in my thoughts, I'll just go to like my bedroom and just like be wherever I want to be.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends on like the mood
Mm.
that I'm in. What about you? Do you bait just on your couch?
I don't have a couch, so I just mostly do this on my bed.
Mm,
But I'm so lazy that I just need to like lay down or sit down and masturbate. However, I did go to Palm Springs not too long ago. I got invited to like this like sex party thing, and I was masturbating, and I was doing it standing up most of the time, and I was like, oh, this is different for me. Like I really,
that was going to be my question because for me, for the past probably at least 5 to 7 years,
mhm.
I get off like 99% of the time. I'm standing when I have an orgasm. And it's become more difficult for me to have an orgasm when I'm laying down. And I don't think I've ever had an orgasm sitting, like in a chair.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I feel uh, uh, like your body remembers, like your like you get used to the feeling of coming in a particular
Yes.
position, and so it's always in your best interest to kind of like change it up.
Yeah, totally.
But so now I'm at a point now where I'm just like I have to be lying down. Well, that's only because I'm really lazy.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe I need to like move, like even in my own space, I need to like just get up and like masturbate. So
Yeah.
your body's becoming more aware of like, oh, we're still like your
Yeah.
penis in your brain is like we're still kind of feeling
Yeah.
pleasure, even though I'm like doing a fucking back roll.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
um which early on in my beta journey, like I did experiment. Like I was like, oh, what if I lay on my side or on my back or like
Yeah. Yeah.
standing up or like outside? And I think over the years, I was like, you lazy motherfucker, just get your ass in bed. And like, all I really want to do is like kick back and just have someone masturbate me.
Mm.
Speaking of fantasies, like I love being able to be like a sub top.
Mm.
Like I just want to be a big dick. You can do whatever you want with me. Like
I
you
like that
can,
too. Yeah.
yeah, like just like use my body as your pleasure. Like make
Yeah.
me do what you need me to do. Like tell me how to fuck you. That's always been like a really big fantasy. And also too, like I've always wanted to get like tied up and edged.
Me too. I would say that that is like a fantasy of mine, just because one, I have a very hard time coming without my hands.
Mhm.
So it is something that, like, for me, when I think about sex, I'm always thinking about things that I want to accomplish or like work on. And
Mhm.
one thing that I want to work on is to be able to come easier. Like, I want to be able to come while someone else is like jerking me off, or like even while I'm fucking someone. Like, I always need to like jerk it off. There's
Mm.
only been probably like less than 10 times in my life where I've come hands free, like someone was blowing me, or, yeah, or jerking me off. Um, so for me, like, there's always these goals, and that's one goal that I'm working. Like, I'll probably get there hopefully when I'm like 40, uh, to become less like, what's the word, like, or desensitized or less sensitized, like, so
Mm.
I, like,
Yes.
I feel like I need to just only use a flashlight and stop using my hand, and then the neural pathway will develop in my head and I'll be able to like come while fucking. I feel like that's the journey I need to go on.
Do you like flashlights?
I don't like, yes and no. I like
I'm the same. I'm the
I
same.
I have one, and I will
Same.
go through months where I don't use it, and then an idea will pop up and be like, "You should fuck your flashlight tonight," and so I'll do it. But what I really want to do is I want to build a shelf that I can install onto my wall and put my flashlight into it, so that I don't need to hold it like while I'm fucking it, and I can actually fuck it and not use my hands essentially. That's the goal.
That's a good goal. I ended up buying like a mount for my shower so I could like fuck it in the shower.
Mm.
But I have a really small shower and I fuck really hard. So like inevitably like it'll just break off. I'm just like, bro, what's wrong with you? You need to fucking chill. And I'm just like, I don't know. That's how I will just like fly boom. And I'm just like, okay, that was not what I wanted to have planned. But I just find it really uncomfortable, like fucking a fleshlight. Like it's not
Yeah,
fucking like a human being. Like it's so
I know.
different. And so I do have one. I also have this, you can see it there. It's like it looks like a fleshlight built for two people. And so essentially like it has two holes opening, but in the inside it's like complete empty chamber. And so your
Okay.
dicks are rubbing inside this hole or
Yeah.
this fleshlight. Um and I used it once on a neighbor, and I haven't used it since. And I've been wanting to find someone to use it again with. Maybe
Hmm.
maybe that'll be something I could cruise for.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I feel like I do you use like Scruff or Grinder or any of those things?
Mhm.
So I feel like, do you notice like I want to say in the past year or so, now there's these like tags that you can have on your profile, and one of them can be Bator. And I feel like the concept of being like a Bator is becoming more known. So I feel
Yes.
like you could find people that are just like into that and not looking to get fucked.
Oh yeah, like on my profiles, it's a solosexual or debater. I get hit up
Hmm.
all the time. And it'll be like jack off question mark. I'm like, yeah, dude, that's exactly what it is. And
Yeah.
oftentimes I'll get people be like, what's a baiter? They'll like self-identify, but they won't actually know what the term is or like
Yeah.
what the history of it is. But I do agree. I think it's the term side that I'm hearing a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm just like, oh, what's a side? And it's just like yeah, this growing knowledge of self-pleasuring, not necessarily masturbation. You know, you can
Right.
self-pleasure with a toy up your butt. But just this idea of just like let's self-pleasure each other in this safe space, but like not doing anything to each other, which is really sexy.
Yeah. And I feel like
Because I
the
really love
analogy here,
watching people self-pleasure. I think it's really sexy.
I think it's sexy. Yeah. I definitely prefer to, I do like to watch that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a huge voyeur.
The thing I was gonna say is I think it's like the analogy to the whole like side and baiter thing is like I'm thinking about gender issues, about how it's only been recently that I feel like people are starting to like get out of the binary of thinking about man and woman, but it's also like, oh, we have intersex, so you know, you could be trans and so forth. Like there's these options other than the binary.
Sure.
And I feel like the same thing goes with sex. You know, we used to just think about top bottom, but it's like, no, there's like a whole world of how people like to identify and pleasure themselves. And we just didn't have the words to describe it, but it's always been there. We just didn't have like the language to sort through it until like recently, I think.
Yeah, I know, I totally agree on that too. Also too, like just the pride of like being able to really take pride and to say that I really enjoy these things. Like I don't have
Yeah.
to be
Shameful or
yeah, I don't
guilt.
have to be ashamed. I don't have to feel like I'm like um doing anything extra, you know.
Uh,
This isn't extra, this is just who I am, like this.
yes.
And that's another thing too, going back to the book, when I left you that voice note, and I was like, oh, I love how they were able to change something that was deemed
Mm,
a negative and then put change the perspective into a positive and to then
yes,
really validate that for yourself, right? And to say,
exactly.
oh, I'm not this one thing. I love that I'm this thing, but I'm actually this thing, and I value it because it's helped me do this other thing. And I was like, oh,
Exactly.
it's such a shift in perspective. I thought that was really interesting.
I know, yeah. I feel like we try to like force ourselves to be one way, and maybe it's just part of being like a baiter, but we go on this journey. And I think a lot of baiters go on like this self-acceptance journey of like, this is what I'm into.
Yeah,
You know, like that's and there's nothing wrong with that, you know?
yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Like that's the one thing that I'm really like. I'm always just like, oh yeah, like Gen Z knows what's up. They're just like doing their thing. They don't give a fuck. They're just like, this is what it is.
Yeah.
Especially right now in the world. But let's not get into politics. That's bizarre. Politics. Where can people find you?
So people can find me on Instagram as the Leather Cook. You can also find me on Twitter as the Leather Cook, though I don't post that much on that particular account. Um, I do have an alt Twitter, but we're gonna keep that on the side at the moment, I think.
Okay.
I don't
So
know. I'm
it's
like I feel like I'm still working through integrating that all the way in.
sure. No, that's totally fair. So Instagram, the Leather Cook.
Yeah, if you're interested in like hypnosis and bait tracks, feel free to send me a message and I'll give you um the contact to my Patreon that focuses on that.
Oof. Yeah, please do so. He has some really hot vocalization tracks that you can really get into.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, cool. Thanks so much for talking to me about sex and all things masturbation.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. All right, y'all. So please check out my buddy Steve on Instagram. He's so hot. And then we'll see you on the next episode.